Mike Moore Media, the first place to hear Rockingham County news and information.
Brian Starkey is a landscape architect with Timmons Group, and he's here to give us an update on the project that they're doing for Mayo River State Park. Hey, Brian, how are you?
I'm doing fine today, Mike. I hope you are.
Doing great, too. Well, I'm just going to turn it over to you, Brian, because I want you to tell us exactly what's going on with your master plan for Mayo River State Park. Okay, Brian?
Okay, I'll do it. Thank you, Mike. Again, pleasure to be with you today. I am a landscape architect. Again, my name is Brian Starkey. I've been a landscape architect for about 35 years now, so I've been doing this a little while. I am a graduate of the landscape architecture program at West Virginia University, and as well studied park design in the Netherlands for a couple years. Parks has become my career. Kind of started in my youth. My family did a lot of visitations to state parks, and it was important for us to be outside. And then out of school, graduation from West Virginia, I had a very fortunate opportunity in my first job to work on the state reservation at Niagara Falls, which is on the American side of Niagara Falls, what's called Prospect Point. And as a very young designer, got a chance to work on maybe the most visited park I will ever work on. So that ignited and fueled my passion for parks. Over my career, I've worked on municipal parks, county parks, and state parks, which is what we're here to talk about today. The Timmons Group is a full-service design, engineering, and technology company headquartered in Richmond, Virginia. Started in the 1950s and opened a Raleigh, North Carolina office in 2008. We are engineers, landscape architects, environmental scientists, surveyors, geotechnical engineers. We pretty much do everything except architecture. So what I want to go over today is really sort of four aspects of what we're doing at Mayo River State Park. Talk a little bit about our project purpose, the parameters of the project, our schedule for completing the master plan, and a little bit about our process, the master planning process that we conduct. What I thought I'd do first is start with a little bit of history and context. The Mayo River originates near the North Carolina and Virginia line and flows from north to south. It's part of the Dan River Basin. In the early 1900s, it played a key role in the textile industry. Textile mills and grist mills operated alongside the river, harnessing the power of the water. There were no less than 4 mills along the river from the Virginia line to Madison and Mayo Dam, where the Mayo joins the Dan River. This is basically the study area for the Mayo River State Park Master Plan. Mill villages, including Avalon, Washington Mills, sprouted up along the river. Those villages have since disappeared, but remembering their history plays a role in the planning process. In fact, houses from the Avalon Mill Village were actually moved to Mayo Dam by mules following a fire that destroyed the mill in 1911. The village had about 60 homes. And the Washington Mill in Mayo Dam, or what they called the Mayo Mill, that building was torn down just recently in 2012, so only 8 years ago. The river has long been a draw for paddlers. Class 2, Class 3 rapids can be found in the upper section. Once past the rapids, the river calms, creating a very leisurely and scenic paddle the rest of the way. Currently, 2 hydroelectric dams prevent paddling the entire length of the river. These are dams from the former Avalon Mill and Washington Mill. Paddlers have to exit the river, obviously, when they get to those dams, and portaging around the dam is a little bit difficult, and of course the water level below the dam is extremely low, making paddling nearly impossible. But once past the Washington Mills Dam, the Mayo flows through the towns of Madison and Mayo Dam. But again, river access from these 2 towns is pretty limited. So the Mayo River is also known for its ecological importance. The Mayo is home to several rare and endangered plant and animal species. Water quality of the Mayo is extremely high, which supports a variety of aquatic life. Also to be found along the river are Native American artifacts, including fish weirs, which can also be found throughout the corridor. So protecting the river is one of the most important tenets of this master plan, protecting the natural and cultural resources while at the same time providing recreational opportunities to North Carolina residents, particularly Rockingham County residents. So the Mayo State Park was created, was created in 2003. But prior to Mayo River State Park was Mayo Park. Mayo Park was originally created by the Washington Mills Company for its employees and opened in 1948. Buses ran hourly from the Mills downtown mill site from in Mayodan to the park. However, the park's life was not really that long. It closed in 1964 when it became clear that the park would have to integrate to remain open, and it remained closed for quite a while. Washington Mills Company employed the firm of Raymond and Rado to design a bathhouse and picnic shelter. The bathhouse collapsed, but the shelter remains in use. Anton and Raymond was employed by Frank Lloyd Wright and involved in several projects with him, including the Imperial Hotel in Japan. Raymond was to Japan what Frank Lloyd Wright was in the U.S. Raymond and Rado were both Czechoslovakian and studied at the same technical school in Prague. On the project, Raymond and Rado collaborated with a landscape architect named F. Elwood Allen. I've tried to do some research on Mr. Allen, but have not found much. In addition to these structures, 9 structures were designed by the firm as part of a larger movement in the United States to commemorate America's victory in war. Raymond considered the picnic shelter, which is still standing and in use, to be one of his better designs. So some architectural history at Mayo as well. As I said, Mayo River State Park was created in 2003 as one of the newest parks in the state system. Interim facilities opened to the public in 2010. The park covers more than 2,700 acres along the river, and not all the park land is easily accessible, nor is it all connected. In fact, it's a little bit disjointed. The primary and central area of the existing park, called the Mayo Mountain Access, that area features fishing ponds, hiking trails, the picnic shelter that I spoke of, group camping, and an office for the park staff. Other areas along the river include the DeShazo Mill access along the upper portion of the park. Provided there is a small parking lot, hiking trail to the Fall Creek waterfall and Mayo River. And this access is one of the newest property acquisitions and a very popular spot among locals. The Anglin Mill access spot features fishing, informal canoe and kayak launches, and a sandy beach. Other points include the Hickory Creek access and the Mayodan access. Paddlers can put in at Mayodan for the final stretch of the Mayo before it connects with the Dan River. In fact, we're not the first master plan. There have been numerous master plans preceding this one over the past 10 years, the first one being done in 1986. As part of this planning process, the design team referenced these plans. The idea is not to start over from scratch, but pull relevant ideas and analysis from previous plans and combine those with new ideas and data in order to meet the goals and objectives of the North Carolina park system. The purpose of this master plan is to develop a vision for improvements over the next 20 years. The master plan will provide recommendations for future improvements to bolster the park's facilities and recreational opportunities while preserving natural and cultural resources. The goal is to provide a roadmap for future improvements, a guideline. The plan creates a long-term vision and is not intended to be implemented in full immediately. It will take time to put the recommendations of the master plan on the ground. But it does allow for ongoing changes for funding, priorities for the Parks Department and the state of North Carolina. But again, the goal of the master plan is to define an appropriate balance between future development and conservation. It's important that the plan complement recreational opportunities currently offered at the park, as well as address the deficiencies. The plan also identifies important property acquisition priorities in order to accommodate these goals. The objective of the recommendations outlined in the plan will be to respond to the demonstrated needs of stakeholders and the community while aligning with the recommendations and the mission of the Division of Parks for the state of North Carolina. The Division for the Parks, Division of Parks mission statement is focused on three things: conservation, recreation, and education. To conserve and protect representative examples of North Carolina's natural beauty, ecological features, recreational and cultural resources within the state's park system. To provide and promote safe, healthy, and enjoyable outdoor recreational opportunities throughout the state, and to provide educational opportunities to promote stewardship of the state's natural and cultural heritage. So our study area for the master plan is effectively the river corridor from the Virginia line to the confluence of the Dan River and Mayo River. The Mayo River begins at the North Carolina-Virginia line and flows south for about 16 miles to where it joins the Dan River just south of Mayodan in Rockingham County. The master plan schedule, our schedule is to be complete before Thanksgiving. We began in February, and this is a 10-month period, basically, and the process consists of several phases. The process, in general, really has puts a lot of emphasis on community and stakeholder engagement. This is really the foundation of our process, working closely with park staff, the Stakeholder Committee, and the community. This engagement occurs throughout the process and is important to every phase. Typical to large master plans like this, the community and stakeholder engagement play a critical role. The community and stakeholders bring a wealth of knowledge and passion to the project, something that would be difficult at best for us to replicate. Further, the community has to live with the recommendations in the Parks Department as well. So it's very important to have their input as we contemplate improvements for the park. Building consensus among community and stakeholder groups is critical to the success of the plan. If the community members do not feel a sense of ownership in the final product, then support will be difficult to come by. So public engagement takes on many forms. We employ numerous methodologies to gather information, including surveys, interviews, and community gatherings. The park staff has been involved in the process and include not only park staff in Raleigh, but also the current park staff at Mayo and former superintendents of Mayo River State Park, trying to get as many perspectives as we can. These professionals have insights that are valuable to the operations of the park, as they are the ones that steward the land and interact with visitors on a daily basis. Stakeholders include longtime residents, park staff, town officials, and advocacy groups, among others. Stakeholders provide, as I said, a level of knowledge and passion about the Mayo River that take a lifetime or more to collect. Through interviews and discussions with stakeholders, the team was able to tap into some of that knowledge and learn about the history of the area. Stakeholders have shared passions and offer opinions on conservation, development, recreation, and historical interpretation. Stakeholders help provide a voice for the communities in which they live and work. On our Stakeholder Committee includes representation from the towns of Mayodan, Madison, and Stoneville, representatives from the Dan River Basin Association, Piedmont Land Conservancy, Rockingham County, Virginia State Park System, former park staff, and others. Community engagement, these days has become a little bit of a challenge, as you all might imagine. Typical to our process in the past were community meetings where we could have very interactive sessions and, have conversations and really learn, and that back and forth is hard to replace. But we've done our best here in this pandemic and the scenario that we're faced with, so we've turned a lot to the virtual aspects of our process. Traditionally, we would hold all those community meetings and conduct in-person interviews, but with the public meetings being canceled and public facilities closed, the typical community engagement process was no longer possible, so we effectively have ramped up the virtual aspects of our process. The design team has found new ways to communicate and facilitate public involvement. Stakeholder meetings have been held virtually using Zoom and other teleconferencing software. We developed a much more interactive website that's been key for us, that allows users to view GIS data, provide input through an interactive map, online surveys, and also includes a project email address that they can simply email us their comments. We have conducted a number of site visits, but we've done those with fewer people and maintain the social distancing. So